it's a happy day for women all over the world. It's the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. Today we'll listen to a very distinguished panel coming from different areas, from policy, from international development, industry, and academia, who will take us through issues that regard women in STEM, that relate to policy, to culture, to and structures. First and foremost, as we have already, let's say, shared with all of you, I would just like to take a little bit of time and say that we will listen during this presentation today about the importance of why STEM is important for women and the impact, the social and economic impact it has in the lives of women. Therefore, I would like to say that, as you already might know, that we're establishing a network of Albanian women in STEM. It's an initiative of different girls and women who are and are not part of the STEM field. My name is Orchidea. Sorry for missing. I'm a little bit jittered because of this, let's say, discussion. I'm a woman in STEM by profession. I studied business informatics, but my career has taken me in a different field. But no matter that, it's that me and other friends and colleagues of mine, we do recognize the importance of women in STEM. Therefore, let me share with you a very short presentation. What is the vision for this network? The Network of Albanian Women in STEM wants to contribute to the social and economic empowerment of women by increasing their participation in STEM, both in academia and industry. There is not a huge representation and participation of women in STEM in this field, and the higher that you go up the hierarchical ladder, the less women there are. And our mission is exactly to increase participation by promoting successful role models, challenging the changing work culture, improving policy, and facilitating structural changes. We have already started since June this year in organizing events where we promote good role models, best role models of Albanian women working in Albania and in the diaspora, working in STEM, who have shared their experience. In October this last year, we organized Ada Lovelace Day, which maybe it's not known by many, but Ada Lovelace is a mathematician, and she's known to be the first programmer, the first person that wrote actually an algorithm. Back in the 1980s, in the 1800s, sorry. Basically, we try to increase the visibility of Albanian women in STEM in Wikipedia. We collaborated with Open Labs Hackerspace and created Wikipedia profiles of Albanian scientists. And that was the first, let's say, step to increase this visibility. All over the world, this is an important issue. Right now in Spain, for example, they're working on a very interesting initiative of hashtag No More Mirandas, meaning that their tagline is what would happen if Einstein was a woman? Would there be the same visibility? They're trying to increase these great role models. And this is what we want to do. We want to increase networking with each country of the region and with the diaspora. We want to identify and promote these great role models, women working in STEM in Albania and abroad and the region. We want to raise awareness on the importance of women participation in STEM fields. We want to contribute to policy development, because the increasing participation of women in STEM is not an issue only of culture, but it's also very important to really policy. The policy measures are very important in that as well. And want to engage in research projects and different projects that address issues and opportunities related to women participation in STEM. So please, whoever feels that you can contribute and want to contribute to this initiative, email us. We'll be sharing our contacts at the end. We're working right now on a charter for the Network of Albanian Women in STEM. This is, let's say, extrapolated from the charter, in order to have, let's say, a network that serves as sort of an umbrella of different organizations and individuals who want to work in this field. And without further ado, I would like to start with our panel so we can respect, let's say, time. I know the time is very valuable for everyone. And I would like to start with Madam Ambassador, Her Excellency Husia Cortaz Altes, which is the ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Albania. She is, let's say, she has collaborated with SCiDEV in different initiatives, and she has previously served in Warsaw, Washington, D.C., and The Hague, and now it's, let's say, a pleasure to have her here in Albania and see her as a supporter of these important causes. Madam Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be here today. Happy. What's actually the abbreviation of this day? Happy Women's and Girls in STEM Day. Happy International. There are always these nice abbreviations for all these days, but I'm very pleased to be here today. And I was really looking at the whole program that you have developed just now for Albanian women in STEM, and I think it's this is exactly what is needed to be done, this connection and the visibility and the policy change. Because what we see now, and I mean, even this meeting, we see how important technology is. It's such a part of our everyday life. And of course, we all know it, but we've been confronted with it even more now over the last year. The same goes for science. I have one of my cousins is working at the Dutch Institute for, one of my female cousins is working at the Dutch Institute for Infectious Diseases. She's been working nonstop, as you can imagine, for over the last year. And thanks to all these women and men in these institutions, hopefully will we be safer again in this world, and we can, well, start seeing each other physically again, because for these kind of networking and contacting events, it's also so important to have the ability to mingle and to just meet people and hear, and in this case, women and girls, and hear what's on their mind and how they are doing. For the Netherlands, although we are known for quite progressive policies when it comes to women's rights or gender equality, we face a problem that many countries face, and that's that women are underrepresented in tech and in innovation fields. And you see this disparity becoming even bigger at a more senior level. And what we see is that in general, 50% of women do not return, 50% of women in STEM do not return to their career after the birth of their first child, because the pace of developments in STEM fields makes it very hard and sometimes even impossible to return to an academic career in STEM after the absence of a year. And that's why we think that the effort should be intensified at the policy level, and not only to increase the participation, but especially to keep women there. And of course, I mean, today we're talking about STEM, but we see this in many fields, that it's at the beginning, well, the amount of women that join, the gender balance is very equal, but the higher you get in many organizations, the more difficult it is to keep this equal balance. And for that reason, it's important that we, in parallel with the policy improvements, we engage together. And that's exactly what you just showed us. That's what you're doing, because we have to challenge the social attitudes and the gender stereotypes. And I love this fact that you were changing Wikipedia or adding to Wikipedia, because it's very true. So many women who have made such important contributions are unseen. I mean, they're invisible. So making them visible is such an important part of what we need to do. And also to counteract stereotyping. If you have a woman who's the head scientist in the country, it makes already such a difference in the idea of many many people in the country that, hey, as a woman, you can apparently do this as well. And just a personal anecdote, one of my colleagues, female ambassadors, she has 2 sons. And one of them, I think he was already 12 or maybe even older, but he met a colleague ambassador who was a man. And then he asked his mother, huh? Oh, I didn't know that men could be ambassadors as well. So, you know, that's the other side of stereotyping. But I think it's very important to have these role models to inspire and to prove that science and technology and engineering and mathematics are fields in which women can, of course, also excel. Yesterday, I visited Tumo, beautiful place for IT at the stadium in Albania. And it was so nice to see that there were at least as many girls as boys active there in training, doing all kinds of things, robotics and all kinds of IT training courses. And I really hope that this is planting the seed for many of them to continue in this field. So to conclude, we are very happy to partner with SCiDEV at this event to further endorse our commitment on gender equality and a fair and inclusive society, in which opportunities should not be determined by gender, but by individual talents. And I also appreciate the idea that the recommendations and conclusions of this discussion will be further used and echoed, published and promoted in policy-making settings, because that's very important. So this call to action, we're here, we're in, and I really hope that slowly but certainly we will, get at the balance, because I think the balance is the best point to be at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. It is thank you for the good words. It's really important what you mentioned about the balance is a golden standard, and it's we know that there are a lot of challenges and hurdles that we have to go through, and we also have Felicia, who was yesterday at TUMO, is one of our young girls in STEM, so it's her day as well today. And it's very important to push and to facilitate for young girls to move into STEM. But also one of the things that I forgot to mention during my introduction is that one of the other, let's say, areas that we want to seriously engage in is empower non-STEM and non-tech women move into tech career. It's really important to further contribute to the economic and social empowerment of these women who have study social sciences of humanities. They can become they can be more competitive in the labor market by moving towards these tech careers. And now it's a pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker. She comes from the European Medicines Agency. She's a scientific officer there, Ms. Ornella Ademi. She has experienced in working with health authorities and the pharmaceuticals industry. She's skilled in pharmaceutics and clinical trials, and she has a degree in pharmacy from the University of Ulster. She will take us through, let's say, a different point of view, what happens in, let's say, in Western Europe, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to all of you with your day, and thank you for inviting me to this amazing gathering. I'm sure that as a woman, all of you have had a great story of hard work and success to tell here, and most of you may maybe not naturally have been expected to have the roles you have, and probably had to fight a lot of traditions and stereotypes to get where you are. Some of you may even had to work even harder than your male colleagues in order to achieve what you have achieved. So as women, we are different than men, and we may perceive and have different views than men. However, our views matter, and if we work together and are considered as equal and as men in this matter, this can lead to having a more sustainable solutions for our world. So where I grew up, or where I studied in Norway, and I worked a lot in the Nordic countries, and now lately in the Netherlands, I grew up to believe that there is not such a job for a man or a job for a woman. So the Nordic countries, they have been mainly working to support this philosophy by, for example, introducing a mandatory parental leave of 4 months for men. And in this way, they support also women to choose more subjects to study or to work in STEM positions. And in the last 5 years, there are 9 other EU countries that have extended the paternity leave, for example, and then these or extended or created a paternity leave, which it makes us see that the paternity should never be perceived as being an alternative of having a career. Well, as I mentioned previously, in the countries I've been working in the Nordics mainly, the governments facilitate the choice of women to work in STEM areas by giving a paternity leave as well as maternity leave, equal opportunities, so they can share the parental leave equally. And they try to tone down what's called the old boys club concept. They try to lower gender payments gaps, and they entrust women and recognize them in key positions. And like, for example, in Netherlands, we have now our first executive director for the EMA, which is a woman, and also to go even further up, for the first time, first woman to become president of the European Commission, it's a woman, so Ursula von der Leyen. So nowadays there are about 41% of women who are scientists, but unfortunately not so many women that work in high tech and manufacturing positions. So there is still a high way to go, but we know that we have great scientists and engineers that are women, like the Italian team that discovered water in Mars, that's led by an Italian woman, Elena Pettinelli, or for example, the last year's Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, like Emmanuel Carpentier. So I think the STEM initiative is a great and a much appreciated initiative. We also know that, maybe you're aware of, that EU has a recovery plan and is investing in the generation of European women in STEM. So the Commission has focused on especially the digital recovery, and then they will invest 20% of the next generation funds program in this. So they wanted to create a Europe with and shape the digital transformation, and investing in artificial intelligence, and then have special focus on digital skills that we all can benefit from. And of course, this investment is inclusive. This is supports women, and it can only be successful if women are also getting the same opportunity as men to be involved here. So the EU is as far as I can see it, and as far as I experience it, is encouraging more women to go towards STEM education, and the culture and custom in the societies should and can be changed by, for example, creating the right laws, and then also the right role models we are missing, or the right initiatives from parents, for example, at kids. I read that some studies support the fact that kids should not play with a certain kind of toys when they are small, but the parents should already start there. And also schools, they should have the right initiatives to create the right environment for women, and not to feel the same pressure as men do. For they can make small adjustments, for example, in departments at university and colleges, and have introductory courses with a better overview for female students who would like to involve in STEM degrees. And I think also we have these stereotypes, as it was mentioned previously, that these professions are for men and not for women. So we have to fight for these stereotypes. We have to create new stereotypes or new images for women in STEM. And I personally have. Well, I have personally an example of a professor. She was my idol, and I was at school, and I was thinking, oh my God, you must have been a genius to have this position of be a researcher at the university. This is something not so common and not so easily achievable. And that comes because I believe that most women don't feel confident in what they believe or can achieve. And while on the contrary, men have an advantage here because they normally feel more confident. And what my professor answered at that time, she said, well, you know, I was not the best student at school. I was just curious. So you just have to be curious and be at the right place and the right time. So that I have taken with me, and I have followed that advice, and I have kind of deleted that idea that you have to be super intelligent or super good at your studies in order to achieve to be a professor, for example. And also one thing I have noticed, probably, I don't know if it's in the West or Nordics more, but when you see job announcements, for example, it's so typical that women would go through all the essential criteria, and if they don't fill one criteria, they don't apply because they think they're not suitable for the job. While on the contrary, you have men which they maybe fulfill only one or two of the criteria, and they send an application because they have the self-confidence, and maybe they even get the job. So I think building up the self-confidence and the role models for us would help a lot for women to choose subjects in STEM, and also a career in STEM. I must say for myself, it hasn't always been easy, but it has been quite facilitating, especially with the government having this kind of laws for paternity and maternity leave. And I know that the change can take time, but I think it's a great initiative then that we are focusing on this and working on it now, because I think it's an important step for the future to have a better inclusion of women in STEM. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for confirming the importance, let's say, of some of the steps that we have undertaken. It is true, different studies show that the pandemic has hit women very, very hard. That's why it's very important to invest in these fields of study where women are independent, they can work from home in more changing environments, and also closing the gender pay gap. And you mentioned also the importance of policy changes and structural changes, and it's very important that policy institutions and policymakers facilitate and support and undertake measures that facilitate participation and wide representation of women in STEM. And while talking about policy, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Odeta Barbelushi, which is an Albanian foreign policy expert, academician, and former diplomat who served as Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Chief of Cabinet to the Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs. She currently holds the position of advisor to the Prime Minister of Albania on issues of EU integration and regional cooperation. And she's also the national coordinator for the Regional Economic Area and Berlin process. Ms. Barbelushi, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Orchidea. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the kind invitation to be part of this platform and to be part of the discussion. Indeed, I come from outside sciences as such, as they are known as disciplines. My own background is social sciences, but I am also indebted personally to one woman who gave a major contribution to science, which is Dorothy Hodgkin. And my postgraduate studies have been supported by Dorothy Hodgkin's Postgraduate Award. So all of us have a woman who has made a major contribution and who has really pushed our careers in one direction or the other. But also, Orchidea, thank you for mentioning my diplomatic background. If there is one thing, I think, which links scientists and diplomats, it's curiosity. I'm thankful that I'm given this opportunity today to give an overview of how gender disparities in science in particular can be bridged, but also how important it is to bring the region of the Western Balkans closer to the EU in this particular area. So when we were working with my colleagues from the region, with RCC, with the European Commission and other partners, in preparing the next stage of a common regional market for 2021-2024, we did include an objective of networking women working in sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the region as part of this plan, particularly of the human component or human capital component. And by doing that, I think we recognize two important issues. The first is that women and girls, as it was outlined here by previous speakers, are indeed gave a critical major contribution to social and economic transformation of our countries. And particularly so in the context of what is called now the dual transition, what Ms. Ademi mentioned, the digital and also the green transition of our countries. The second component, the second element I think is as important, is that in the context of the pandemic, but also it will be as important in the post-pandemic economic recovery, we have urgently realized the importance of evidence-based policy and of innovative solutions. And some of these innovative solutions have indeed come from women. Needless to mention, one of the vaccines was invented by a couple, half of which in terms of gender equality, there's an example for you. But what I would like here to start with are a few numbers. We did hear about some challenges, but we also heard about some good examples. And I would like to start with some numbers, particularly about women or the participation and engagement of women in sciences, in universities, and in scientific research. According to a recent report from Leiden University, in fact, incidentally, which was then taken up by The Economist in 2019, on a global scale, women make only 27% of scientists working in labs, working in science departments in universities. But when it comes to Eastern Europe and Southeast Europe, these numbers are reversed, or let's say are balanced. So if we speak of Southeast Europe, we have roughly parity. What we see there, about 49% of scientific researchers in the region are women, and that percentage goes slightly higher in the case of the Baltic states. Let's say in Lithuania and Latvia, it's about 57 or 52% respectively. And that is one of those positive, let's say, positive features of the region of Southeast Europe and Eastern Europe, but which at the same time makes one think why there are so many women, but not always in leadership position. I think Ambassador Kortals mentioned that in leadership position, you find less, that ratio is lower. And that is also the case with, let's say, scientific titles, scientific degrees. When I was looking at the numbers only in 2020, what we see is that we have indeed a very high percentage of women, around 62% of women being awarded the title of associate professor, but only 43% being awarded the title of professor in comparison. So that percentage goes lower when it comes to higher leadership positions, also universities. Nevertheless, as I would mention here, is that when it comes to numbers, Albania, is we could say in a good place. I would also mention here a positive element with regard to engagement or participation in the community programs like Marie Curie actions or the COST actions, which is another way to empower indeed women scientists. And looking at the numbers of last year, 63% of Marie Curie actions actually were taken up by women applicants or led by women scientists. Referring to the COST actions in particular, out of the entire, let's say, pond of beneficiaries, 111 were women and only 70 men. As some good projects, positive projects were mentioned here, TUMO was mentioned here, I think it's not coincidence that in the main, let's say, scientific institutions in the country, there are women leading, like the National Agency for Research and Innovation, but also the Albanian Agency for Information Society, as well as TUMO, are led by women. But another element which I think was brought up here by previous speakers, and I would like to underline, is how the universities and academic landscape, the academic area, also has streamlined, has adopted codes of ethics or guidelines. And here I would mention the example of only 2 universities, in fact, University of Tirana and University of Laura, which have adopted what is called the EU Charter and Code for the recruitment of women and for guidelines for gender equality in the universities. However, there are a number of not reservations, but important points which I'd like to underline. A is that not all innovation and technological developments happen within universities and academic platform. And here I think it was obvious also by previous speakers. Indeed, in some particular areas of innovation, universities rate very low in comparison to what is happening in the private sector, what is happening in the enterprise, small, medium enterprises particularly, but also what's happening in the landscape of startups. So, and in that particular aspect, I'm very glad to share that we are now in the final stages of preparing a specific law on the startups, which would indeed regulate, legally speaking, would provide the legal basis for the regulation of this evolving, very promising but new area. The second point is age. We mentioned here age disparities, but we also need to think of how age and gender correlate. What we have seen in the past few years is a number of innovations, a number of inventions, innovative solutions coming from young women. I have here in mind an excellent, good example of the group of 3 decoders who invented and launched the application of JZA, a specific application which won an international prize, and which is specifically addressed to women. So it's basically made by young women for women, and this is an excellent example of how women can help each other across different skill sets and in different fields. But when we think about age, we need also to think of women who are well established in their professions and are now in need of new skill sets. Here I have in mind, let's say, also teachers, women who are not, let's say, scientists, who do not work in universities, but are more and more increasingly in need of new skills, of being equipped with new skills. Secondly, here I think it was mentioned, it's a very valid point, the cultural perceptions, and that is a structural point, that is structural issue of how we actually balance or reverse the stereotypes. Indeed, one of the numbers that come up and are quite concerning is that throughout their careers in STEM, women, 70% of women on a global scale, not only regionally, are more inclined to leave their careers and to interrupt. And some of the reasons were indeed given here why they might do so, because of family and because of other obligations, which are not always pressed on men by our societies. The other, I think, point which is worth mentioning here is what I would call a double gap, not just the gap in socioeconomic opportunities between men and women, but also on a broader national and regional scale. So when we look at numbers of Western Balkans, and when we look at numbers also public investment, not less, in countries of the EU member states, even the newer countries of the European Union, Southeast European countries, we can see how big the difference is. And I think the main challenge for us as policymakers would be, of course, but not only, to bridge that gap, the developmental gap between the Western Balkans and the EU. I was going through, while we were preparing the Common Regional Market Action Plan, going through the numbers of innovation, how much investment there is in innovation technology in our countries. as compared to the EU, we see that 5 out of the 10 most or biggest global spenders on innovation are EU member states. So, and when compared to the Western Balkans, that difference is quite big. And according to the Joint Research Council report of 2018, when it comes to innovation, even the biggest public spender economy in the Western Balkans on innovation still only reaches almost the levels of Croatia and Bulgaria in 2015. So I think that is a number which makes one think how important accession into the EU is, integration into the European research and innovation area is. And here, to conclude, I would mention two important instruments in addition to the Common Regional Market Action Plan and agenda. I would mention two important tools or instruments to bring the region closer to the EU and to European research and innovation area. One is the upcoming EU agenda for the Western Balkans on innovation, research, culture, youth, and sports, which is due to be published in June this year. And the second instrument is the EU investment package for the Western Balkans, which was launched last October. And indeed, its pillars are primarily those pillars which converge to what we did with the Common Regional Market Action Plan, how to strengthen human capital, how to improve connectivity between the countries in the region, but also how to help these countries make the green and digital transition. And I think women and girls play a major part in that transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barbalush. You indeed mentioned some very important points when talking firstly about creativity and curiosity. One of the things why, let's say, STEM is very, very interesting is because it fuels creativity and it fuels curiosity in individuals. Sorry. You also mentioned the importance, there is high participation of, there are a lot of women scientists actually winning a lot of Marie Curie and cost actions, which is very important. But when you see these numbers compared to the numbers of women up in hierarchical positions, that is an issue. So we need to state that the structures in place and policies within universities or within the larger ecosystem do not facilitate this advance of women higher in hierarchical positions, when in terms of number in acquiring funding, according to the data that you shared with us, they are more successful. And I would also like to stop on what you mentioned regarding the investment in innovation, but also the importance of digital transformation. As you mentioned, or what I took from your speech, let's say, is that women should not only, so we shouldn't consider that women should be only recipients of the benefits of digital transformation, but also need to be pushers and be actors in this digital transformation. And connecting to that, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Enongela, which is a program specialist with the United Nations Development Program in Albania. He has more than 20 years of experience in policy analysis, strategic planning, statistics, economic governance, and employment and startups and skills development. He has a degree from the Polytechnic University of Tirana, Lancaster University in the UK. And he's very passionate about social innovation, youth engagement, and everything that is digital. And now the floor is yours. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Orkidea. Much appreciated. I feel really privileged to be part of this panel. And I've done some research, as you know, this discussion has already been picked up in the office in the past year or so. I'd appreciate if you can actually give me the right to share the screen for the presentation I've prepared.
Can someone of the host help us with that?
You have the right, Mr. Ingela, to share.
Okay, excellent. Can you, I hope you can see now, right? Is it visible? Yes. Okay, yes. Excellent. Okay, so basically, you know, I work for the UN, UNDP, and we tend to look things from a sort of broader perspective, we have been working in the skills development reform in the country for the past 10 years, and we have started to look strongly the connection between the labor market and the education system. So what I'm going to be presenting today echoes a little bit what Odeta was mentioning, but also tends to look from the broader angle of things. The situation of women in STEM, or anything for that matter in the labor market, that happens in the labor market, initiates in the early days, in the preschool levels, in the education system. So basically, I've pulled out of some figures that I thought may be interesting to share with the audience about starting with the education. So starting with, and I think this is a bit of a telling data, and the story that I'm narrating here is sort of like building into the argument of why Albania should be paying more attention to women in STEM and what are the constraints and challenges. If we see, it's widely acknowledged the fact that the early preschool education is a very important aspect in getting to the right mind of development in the kids. And if you look at the data, unfortunately, we do have a long way to go. I've read certain articles and studies that argue that for the age of 3 to 6, I think the mind development is rather more important than milk. So basically, I think this is an argument that perhaps feeds into the story that I'm saying, where you can see there's a bit of a parity in the EU regarding boys and girls that enter the preschool, whereas we do have a bit of a gap when we talk about girls specifically, girls compared to also boys in the country, but even compared to the EU, where we are aspiring to go. And then again, moving on to the next stages, we are all aware with the PISA assessments, and I think PISA assessments, with all its sort of pros and cons, has become a bit of a reference benchmark about the development of young pupils. And we see here this graph actually articulates and visibly articulates how we are not doing very badly when it comes to mathematics and science, as well as reading, compared to the Western Balkan countries. But there's a bit of a gap compared to the OECD average, which again points to the right direction which I'm going. If we look into the specific aspects of the comparison of the gender gap in the 3 main areas of PISA, I think also I've tried to pull out some interesting findings here. In the amongst high performing students in mathematics or science, about 2 in 5 boys in Albania expect to work as an engineer or a science professional at the age of 30, while 1 in 4 expects to do so in girls. Now, we're talking about 40% versus 25%. Maybe statistics, we will play a role here, but it's a bit of a indication of how that disparities are actually being shaped from the earlier ages. And then, different interesting aspect is the fact that only 2% of boys and a really negligible percentage of girls in Albania expect to work in ICT. Now, 2018, we should also take into account that there's been a drive with the ICT development in the country. So if the results were 2018, so maybe this goes way back. So I think moving on with the other argument in mathematics, if we see the mathematics here, I think we do fare better in Albania in terms of girls and science. Actually, mathematics and science, we do fare better compared to boys and compared to the OECD countries, which again shows that we do come from a strong, sort of solid sort of education system, although yet, albeit not to the very potential that it must fulfill. Moving on to the higher education, the tertiary education, again, the numbers of women are pretty good compared to boys in Albania, yet lower compared to the EU standards and the EU average. So I think this is also another indication of the more the gradual step that we go forward in the educational formation of a child and a student, I think these disparities start to appear. Then again, if we look at this, the numbers of the graduated students in the STEM sort of degrees, which includes, I must say here also, the health, manufacturing, and construction. So it's all part of that in terms of when you look into the data that as part of the classifications, occupational classifications of ILO that our Instat also adopts. So again, we look in here basically at the figures that, you know, the number of women is pretty higher compared to men. So basically, let me just, you know, try. I think I wanted to share a little bit of a graph here, but it's impossible with the internet here. The UNDP publishes the global UNDP report every year, and I was looking at the figures of the report of 2020 that was published earlier in December, and there's a data indicator there that talks about the number of graduates, the percentage of graduates in the STEM, including women. And I think the argument here, I think it was mentioned, I'm not sure, I think by our data, that, you know, compared to other developed countries, we're not faring badly. We're doing okay. 46 to 48% of graduates in STEM are young women. And if you look at the developed countries data, we're looking at around 35, 39. So I think in that sense, we come to the discussion that maybe, you know, which the often known the fact that, you know, maybe the ICT or maybe the developed countries, the fact of being a woman is not very sort of like conducive in making a career in certain aspects of mathematics and science. You know, not you know, we all know the saying, you know, Silicon Valley is not a very sort of welcoming place for women. I think things are about to change now, but my point here being is that you know, in the country with the figures we have, we're not faring that badly. Again, here, if you look at this graph here, again, I mean, we can pull all sorts of arguments here in this sort of like comparison between women and men that go to the European countries for education purposes. We see a bit of a difference between young women and men that travel to the EU for education purposes. Now, moving on into the employment side of things. Labor force participation is the one that somehow defines how women are taking part in the market economy of a country. And again, doing the comparison here between men and women in Albania and men and women in the EU and within Albania and the EU, I think we do come to see that there's a bit of a disparity here in the labor market when it comes to the participation rate in the country, which is quite significant. 17% of less women are actually actively engaged in the labor market in Albania, so versus 9% in the EU. So again, you know, we're moving into the barriers of the labor market following education, barriers to the labor market, and trying to incentivize women taking part of the labor market. So where we here now we come with certain challenges, and as we move into the adulthood of students and graduated people. I'm gonna skip this. This is lower end of the employment sort of angle. We're looking at the higher end, the highly educated highly educated women and men. And here is the figures of the lower end of the education, and those that are unemployed, long-term unemployed, and those that are looking for a job, as well as the unemployed registered job seekers that are in the country. Again, here the gap is in the lower end. We're looking at more women being registered as long-term unemployed job seekers in the country. If we look at I think it was mentioned a few times, the comparison between in the Western Balkans. I think this figure is actually that we were trying to pull out together with the team of the share of employment in the Western Balkans, and we're talking here like, you know, general employment in STEM, just to give you an idea of how the environment and how the economic sort of like outlook of a country in our countries of Western Balkans is actually conducive to STEM. And I think we're coming to the same sort of like levels. We're looking at, you know, between 9 and 11%. Although I have to say, you know, although in STEM, we tend to sort of like we tend to face less sort of like informality because the STEM jobs are rather regulated and formal. In the overall weights in a country's sort of like economy, I think maybe if we take into account the informality in Albania, maybe, and maybe in other countries, we have to verify how they calculate, we would look at those figures to be considerably lower if we take the informality into account. By looking at some figures in the employment, again, you know, we don't see significant sort of like differences between men and women, especially in the past few years. I think there's been a steady gap in the employment in STEM on the sectors that I mentioned earlier. That includes the health and the economics and statistics and construction. And then, you know, I'm going to finish with this slide, which shows, I think this is like internal calculation that we've done with the team, shows what are the top women occupations in Albania and men. So we look at like nurses and technicians and other health specialists and professionals, and ICT processing technicians, news support, and then doctors. And then we look at the top men occupations. We look at the application developers, physicists, nurse sciences professionals, architects, designers. So we do see here the discrepancy in the qualitative side of employment. So basically, if I were to move into the conclusions, I think you know, if we are to promote any sort of like better engagement or outcomes of women in STEM, I think we should start from the early days. We should start from the preschool. So any reform that, you know, takes place in this country has to look at like you know, I think, you know, the piecemeal approaches have to be sort of like finished. We need to look at the broader picture, and we conduct wholesome and holistic reforms that take into account interventions in all these aspects of like education, and then that eventually would lead with the results in the labor market. Unfortunately, the Albania's economy is not sort of like performing at a high productivity rate. So maybe while we don't see much of a gap between women and men, I think we do have a bit of a when it comes to wages, maybe, and that's why we see hordes of people going, because are attracted to work in the Western Europe, because payment is better, and the economy is sustaining that those wages, which we have to come into this country as well. And I think the shift that needs to take place is basically number 4 in the conclusions, where we see that women are reportedly in this country to be mostly on supported roles, technicians, rather than like leading specialists or top level managers, as we're saying. And again, if we look at the whole picture of on the reform, we need to revise the quota. We need to, you know, look at the curricula and make the education a bit more attractive and responsive to the labor market. You know, we maybe don't have an issue here with non-discriminatory with discriminatory legal provisions, but I think, you know, it's worthwhile looking at the provisions that actually can facilitate the engagement of women in STEM. And again, everyone is talking about digital upskilling these days and transitioning to the skills into the IT and the digital sphere and AI and all that in innovation. I think, you know, maybe some specific programs dedicated and targeted to women would definitely be welcome to boost their chances in the labor market. And again, you know, work-based learning, it's also something that we've been trying to promote all years, trying to get a bit more active engagement with the private sector. So we don't just, you know, we don't look at the sides from policies, but the private sector needs to also be a bit more open and supporting and providing a bit more qualitative support, as well as payment, and dedicate more R&D in their program. If you look at the figures in Albania, R&D are pretty low. I haven't seen them for a while, but the last time I checked, were pretty low compared to the GDP percentage. And I think that the R&D is it's a bit of an indicator of how the economy can boost and how the economy can become a bit more competitive compared to what it is. So I'll leave it at this. And obviously, this was just to give you an idea of how we see things and what's important and how the labor market can be boosted to support better the engagement of women in STEM in the country. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. It was an excellent presentation. I would like to just to mention something that in the beginning of your presentation, you were saying that less girls are getting into education than boys. And I'm not sure about the data, but I would just like to pin something in our minds when we talk about marginalized groups. And what's the, let's say, separation between rural and urban areas? These are all factors that, let's say, us trying to promote women in STEM engagement and advancement in career should keep in mind. And one of my questions is that I hope someone can help with answering is that when we see the data of women participation in STEM, the one that you were mentioning from Instat, that include physics, biology, mathematics, and ICT, I would like to know let's say, what is the percentage of these, let's say, women studying and graduating in these fields, and where do they go after graduation? Do they go primarily to education? Because if we refer to the report that UN Women with Instat they publish each year regarding men and women in Albania, when you see at let's say women and men studying in these areas, there are more women studying there. And also when we go to education, we have more women teachers than male teachers. And it's very important what you mentioned, that we talk about pay. So we don't talk about equal pay, saying that for the same position, women and men should be paid the same. I'm not sure about the numbers in Albania, but there is a sort of this level there. But when we talk about gender gap pay, is what you mentioned at the end, your last slide with the graph. It was very great one, seeing that there are much more men than women working in AI, working in informatics, in positions that are highly paid, compared versus to women who are leading with the position of nurses. Is it just a sort of let's say, short reflection on why, let's say, these issues need to be looked more into depth? And what you were mentioning, Odeta was mentioning in the beginning, it's very difficult to find this sort of information that is already elaborated, and so thanks for sharing that. And I would like now to, I don't know whether you have any comments, but we can keep that
Maybe.
let's say, sorry?
Yeah, we can actually have
wait for the end. And I would like to go now and pass the floor to Professor Anila Paparisto, which has a very long experience in higher education and research. Since 1994, she has been lecturing in invertebrate zoology and teaching didactics at the Faculty of Natural Sciences at University of Tirana. She's a widely published author in books and both scientific papers. She is an awardee of the UNESCO Laurel Fellowship Award for young women in science. But also she has her contribution in terms of policy and strategy, being a member of the Council of Higher Education and Scientific Research, and a member of the accreditation board of the Agency of Quality Assurance in Higher Education. And also, before Anila starts, let's say, her contribution, I would like to mention that Anila's profile was one of the profiles that we worked when we were working with the Editathon in increasing the visibility of Albanian women in science, in STEM, in Wikipedia. And we were very happy, let's say, to do a small contribution. One of the learnings that we had from that experience is that there is also a little bit, not a lot of information of women in STEM on the web that you can use as references when you work on Wikipedia profiles. Nevertheless, we try to do our best. So Nila, the floor is yours. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving me the possibility to share with you a little bit from my experience in the field of education, in STEM field of education, and in the process of trying to help young women to be good researcher and to be persons that are involved and are working in the field of research and in the field of STEM. So as you heard now, I'm working at Tirana University. I'm teaching there. I'm an entomologist. I'm working with insects. My field of research are insects. But at the same time, from 25 years now, I'm working as didactics on teaching biology, and one of the most important field of my work is preparing teachers of biology. So having this goal in myself, I think that in different moments, the report between being a researcher of entomology and being a teacher of teachers or trainer of teachers for the future of Albania sometimes is more important in my way of thinking and believing than being a researcher of insects. So in the beginning, as everyone else in the research is the most important place when you want to work and you want to give all. But working every day with students and working every day with teachers in Albania, teachers of science in Albania, I understood that these teachers need help, because if we would like to change our country tomorrow, we have to change the way we teach. We have to change the way that we give our kids, the way we give out to our kids to think, how they think. And science is very important to grow up people that think in a different way, think critically, and to realize problems and go after problems and analyze them and find solutions. So learning by research, learning by researching and learning by doing things, it's quite a lot different from the learning way that we have in our schools, where we go there and our teachers teach what they know, and they don't ask the kids what they want to know or what they already know and how they want to build their knowledge and to develop this knowledge, and which are the problems that they would like to give answers. So going after this and realizing that we have to think differently and to change the way that we prepare teachers, because the teachers of the future cannot be the same with the teachers that we have today in the schools. So this changed my perspective of working at university. And this made me to consume more time on educating students to be teachers and helping them to understand that STEM, science, is not only science for science, but it's a way that you can teach your kids, you can teach your students how to learn. So learning how to learn, for me, it's more important than what you learn in school. Because if you take this possibility from your teachers to understand that learning goes on every day of your life, it doesn't stop where the school finished, we have done a giant step to change the future of this country. So this is the field that I'm working now, and I'm proud of that. I have wonderful students. Yesterday, one of my students that she already finished the university 5 years before has been gotten from her kids, the school kids, her class, a certificate where they were saying that she was the best teacher of the world. So the day yesterday it was an important day for me, because I'm going after my students on not only in the time that they are in school, in university, but even the time that they are working. So when I got the certificate from her, I was really happy. And what she was doing differently is the way that is she's organizing her teaching. She changed the way of her teaching. She is not based only books. Books are not only important because the knowledge is without end. You cannot find a book that it's written everything that you need, everything that the world knows. So you have to understand that books can come and help you, but first you have to find for what you are looking for. First you have to find what is your interest. First you have to find where is your motivation. First you have to find where you are linked and what you want to do. So after this, all the kids are marvelous. All the kids take part in the teaching process. All of them develop themselves. It's not a bad one and a good one. It's not one that take the mark 10 and one that takes the mark 4, because they give their contribution in a way that they feel it in their hearts, and in the way that they find solutions for what they are looking for. So this is my message, and I'm trying to just make this message not only my message, but the message of every teacher that I'm trying to help and train for a better Albania of tomorrow, where Albania has to be growing up not only to have more girls in STEM, because already we have. At university, in my class, in 80 students, there are 70 girls and only 10 boys. And when they finish, when I started university, I had only one woman was teaching at university. She was not already professor. After that, she gave the title of professors. Now, in those 10 last years in biology department, there is no one man employed. There are only women. So now we are more women than men, and when the men that are old and they will go in pension, I think that there will be in the department only women and no men. And I don't like this, because I don't think that this disequilibrium is good even for science or STEM. But in this process, we have to think and understand that not only the place that women have in positions is important, the important is the way of thinking. If we just give to the kids a different way of thinking, believing, and looking at the future, that there are no differences on the gender, and every one of us has its own capacities, its own way of thinking, and we try to give floor to develop this, I think the change, it will be sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anila. That was a beautiful, beautiful message. And I think that this is what, let's say, every one of us is striving to do. Ornella mentioned in the beginning that there should be no gender barriers why we should engage in a certain area or not, or in certain profession or not. And STEM is very important because, as Eno mentioned, that STEM education should start at the early stages of education, because it's very good for developing of cognitive abilities and creativity and curiosity and analytical thinking. And I think that one of the, let's say, takeaways that we have from today is that we should also focus on the quality of teaching and the quality of teaching STEM related subjects. It's very, very important, as you already mentioned. And I would like to move on to the last speaker of today. She's the last in the, let's say, list of speakers, but she's a very high importance. She's a young woman in STEM, a Marie Curie PhD fellow and applied artificial intelligence and medicine researcher focusing on cancer. Ornella Bardi we're very happy to have you here today. You have been working in Spain, in the USA, in Ireland and Finland for your part of PhD studies, but also you have been part of the Erasmus Master Program, and let's say you are a very good example of this international community, of what internationalism in science can do and the benefits that we get from that. The floor is yours. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and happy Women's Day in STEM and science. I had prepared like something, but then I took notice of all of everybody's speeches, and I think I've come up with some topics that are very important to reiterate, and also some other topics that were not mentioned here. As Orchidea mentioned, I've been working and studying and working in various countries, and I've seen variations of women in STEM and women in workforce in different countries. And I have seen also the difference between countries such as developed countries such as Albania and developing countries such as Albania and developed countries. And even within developed countries, there are variations, such as, for example, in UK, in Ireland, in US, in Spain, in France, are very different compared to Nordic countries. And that's because of some policies that these Nordic countries have been working on for quite a long time compared to the rest of Western countries. I saw the presentation that Enom had, and it was very interesting. So to me, from my perspective, I see that the problem is not the talent. So we have the talent, we have the women, but I see the problem is more bias and discrimination in hiring processes. And we need to work on this, and we need to bring measurable outcomes and norms for this hiring processes to be more fair, for not only for women and men, but I see here also other minorities that might not be relevant here in Albania, but are relevant in other countries. But also here in Albania, because we have diverse people and with diverse backgrounds and experiences in life. So that is very important. And another very important thing is retaining women in workforce. As other people mentioned, that women leave workforce, especially STEM field, after some time. And that is mainly because women they do not have allies in their organizations they work for, and they do not have equal opportunities to move up inside the company. So the only way is to leave the workforce and go and work somewhere else, which is very bad, because we're leaving talent, and we're leaving. We don't have that kind of talent that we should have, because if we want to work together and to combat some big and complex topics such as climate change, for example, we need everybody in the table. And there are some work done in the regard of allyship by Lily Zhang. She has published various work in HBR as well, and you can find her work there. But she defines allyship as making a genuine, measurable, positive impact on the well-being and success of the group that you are trying to ally with. And this is very important. The focus of measurable impact and how you do that. So one way to do that is to tackle the systematic problems that we have within the organizations. For example, instead of focusing on when one person says something or uses name calling towards a minority group or women or woman, then some other man, for example, calls out the person. And the problem is not that we should not rely on one person to call out that other person, that he or she is not doing well because they are name calling the minority person in this case. But we should rely on good and best practices in the organization. We should work on cultures, and we should and we should rely, for example, on norms. And one example could be, for example, during the meetings, women have been, there are a lot of studies that show that women are overtalked or they are stopped. And this can be tackled by exactly showing what the norm during the meeting is. So instead of stopping the person while she's talking, then we say we should let everybody speak and then we discuss. And this is very important because we're not talking, as I mentioned earlier, we're not talking about only women, but also other minorities. And when we have the opinions and diversity in the organization, and that can be also like not only private, but it can be in a normal academic institution, for example, the research has shown that even the companies are better financially. So diversity is good, but diversity doesn't mean that we should write, for example, policies or acts that say that we need this percentage of women or minority group in the company, because that also punishes women who or minority groups that got the job, the position by their own merit. But however, the other people see it as something that because of the quotas, she got the position or they got the position. And that is not very well thought, because these kind of acts and policies, they backfire. And we have seen this, for example, although it's not exactly the same, but there was the Americans Disability Act in the United States. They wrote this legislature to protect the disabled people, but somehow companies were very reluctant to hire people with disability, because they were very afraid that if a person was not doing very well in their job, it will be very difficult, and the company was going to be seen very negatively if they would hire the person. And so we should be careful when we talk about policies and legislations, if they are not very well thought and go through. Regarding the Marie Curie, it's true. I'm part of the Marie Curie Alumni Association West Balkan chapter. I'm a board member there, and also very active here in Albania. I've been working with various institutions here in Albania, such as the National Agency for Scientific Research and Innovation. And yes, the majority of, although I haven't applied for Marie Curie grant from Albania, I was already living abroad, but the majority of people actually getting grants from Marie Curie are women. And I've seen also in the region, it's the same. Although we get the job, and it's very important, we get the grant. However, due to the way how the Marie Curie action is thought, you need to move a lot from one country to the other to conduct research, which is very good. And personally, I've experienced, I've grown professionally and personally. However, as in academia in general, nowadays it's very difficult to find tenure track position. And we have seen this not only for women, but also for like all the genders without discrimination. It is very difficult to find tenure track position. And usually after doctoral degrees and postdocs, researchers tend to do a lot of postdocs after postdocs. And this is not very, very good. And that's why sometimes researchers tend to leave academia after some time. And this is, and a lot of people have been iterating towards like finding other career tracks for researchers. The reason why are more women than men applying for Marie Curie grants, I don't know. I don't know. And as a matter of fact, this week I was contacted by 2 potential Marie Curie fellows because they wanted to get to know more about the program and the process and everything. And I haven't gotten anything from men yet, but let's see how it goes. I think there are various studies as well, going back to why there is this big difference, and to talk more a little bit about this aspect in startups that Odeta mentioned. There was a study done in this last decade in Sweden, and it was very interesting. They were kind of watching how VCs, venture capitals, act towards different entrepreneurs in front of them. And they noticed that some personal characteristics for men and male, they were seen very differently. For example, when a woman was very assertive and she knew what she was talking about, she was very confident, they saw this as a negative characteristic for women, whereas for men, they saw it as very, very good. And the other way around was for example, empathy. They saw this as a negative aspect, like women being emotional for women, but for men, they thought that, oh, okay, he's good with other people, which is a positive aspect for the company. So we see this even in this personal characteristics, we see these differences between men and women, which is, to me, it sounds ridiculous, but at least in this study, then the VCs in Sweden, they changed the way how they give the money to these startup founders, which is good, and I think other countries should implement this. I can talk even more about different studies that have been gone through in different parts of the world, but I think I have to stop so that we have some time for discussion.
Thank you, Ornella, and thank you everyone for your presentations. It is everything is highly appreciated, and I have to say that there are a lot of lessons learned from this talk. And thank you, Ornella, for your contribution. And it is true that one of the issues that we absolutely need to address is the issue of bias and discrimination. And it's not only in STEM, it's in all over the fields, but in STEM, we probably see it more, as the hard sciences are historically, let's say, culturally known as a man field. I would like to open up the discussion. Please either write a comment on the chat or a question, or please raise your hand and just open your microphone and ask the questions. If we don't have any questions, live ones, Albana asks, what about a career advice program during high school or earlier? And yes, I don't know whether any of the speakers wants to address this question, but as far as I know, there are, let's say, initiatives that are trying to tackle career offices at the high school level on this career offices, basically. So this will be like a support or a push for that.
This came up also in research that we did with our students here at TUMA, asking them, what do you think that is missing? And they said career advice.
Yes.
And I would like to take this opportunity to invite you all at TUMA premises and see what we're doing with these kids from 12 to 18 years old. It's amazing. I mean, how they keep up with the trends in technology without differences like girls or boys, and they are very eager to learn digital sciences and creative digital sciences. So it's a very good opportunity to see how they are preparing for, you know, and gaining skills that will help them in the tomorrow's world.
Orchidea, if I may.
Yes, please, Diana.
Thank you to all the speakers. It was a very interesting and inspiring as well discussion. I just wanted actually to acknowledge and to give the floor maybe to Felicia. I don't know if she's ready to say something. She's our youngest in this panel today, but she's also attending some courses at Tumo Center, linked to what Sabina was saying before, and she also has received a scholarship by with the support of the Netherlands Embassy and within a program that SCiDEV and another organization, the Burnetic, is implementing. And she's really, to my understanding, a bright young girl, and I would like to hear from her and hopefully in the future to see her a very successful scientist in whichever field that she would like to choose. Thank you again. Felicia, would you like to share something, please?
Very fun being a part of this meeting and seeing women be so powerful and have so much knowledge about technology. I had a lot of fun at the Tumo Center. I learned about robotics and everything that has to do with technology. And I made a lot of friends as well that are very interested on technology and STEM. And I am proud to be one of the women here on the meeting because it makes me proud.
Thank you, Felicia. Thanks a lot. I don't know whether you have any other questions or you want to add something more. Even the panelists are welcome to share something. If you don't, I would like to, I'm sorry. Yes, Erion, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, quite interesting and exciting all events happening here. Although I feel sorry for my gender not being a lot here, because this shows from the very beginning that, okay, we pretty much try to separate this matter. So when it's about women in science, it's only women coming here. When it's men in science, it's only men. But we have to fix it a little bit, this one here. But indeed, going to the point, I have seen quite carefully the whole matter of science in Albania. Indeed, it's quite important, the whole workflow. So starting from the very beginning, so from kindergarten and then elementary and everything. So it's quite necessary that the whole, let's say, younger, let's say, kids get this idea, like, okay, career advice you mentioned before, getting inspired, start thinking about how to learn, as also from Professor Paparizou mentioned before. So all these skills have to build up. And as we had this here, quite a live reference of how the kids can work if they give them the opportunity. So Felicia just spoke prior to me. Indeed, if they get the opportunity, they really can bright from the very beginning, and they can feel inspired. Even though probably even can overpass these obstacles on the work environment and study environment later on, so they don't have to give up. If they really build strong these foundations and this trust and confidentiality, as you mentioned before, from very early ages. So this is indeed the first one, and this opportunity like Tumo is giving right now to Felicia. I don't know her, let's say other, let's say her age is going around, but we have to provide these kind of opportunities. Actually, so this is a very current step for Albania, Tumo Center, and this can even have to replicate it definitely in the smaller, let's say, sizes, but all around Tirana and all around Albania. So like this, you can indeed have this, and not some opportunities like organizing some workshops once in a year or something, but indeed this kind of centers have to build up everywhere, and these kind of organizations, and start building not only in early ages, which is very important, definitely, but also continuing next steps. Definitely in here, a huge role can play education, which they have research centers in there. And from my perspective, I've seen that all research centers or project offices, because they have different names, it's our, let's say, populated are from almost in place. So definitely they're doing good job. Of course, as mentioned before, Ms. Angela, I say we need more R&D. So either this in academics or either this in enterprises, and definitely it should have a better bridge between them. So enterprises, SMEs, and definitely academia. And this, by empowering this kind of linkage, we can have better, interesting results, and definitely empower more women in science and see the results. Last thing I want to close in here, my thoughts. Indeed, from my perspective, because I want to give my perspective, I've been working more than 25 years in the ICT, and all the women have been my colleagues. Definitely have been like a small numbers than the men's, but definitely the quality, it's something that we have to discuss here, because we're discussing about numbers, say 50, 60% or something like this. But definitely, if we talk about quality, definitely they say women are surpassing men's, and this is something we have to point out, and definitely we have to take this example and push it away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arjan. I don't know if anyone else would like to share something final. Yes, please, Arnella.
Yeah. Arjan, that's why I mentioned allyship. It's very important to bring men to this talk, this kind of conversations, because without their help, because men usually are on top of the boards in companies and the CEOs, and women are brought to the board member level or to CEO level when there is something going wrong with the company. And we've seen this during the pandemic, and we've seen this in big tech companies like Marissa Mayer in Yahoo. They brought Marissa Mayer as CEO of the Yahoo when the company was basically bankrupt. And we've seen this with Mary Barra as GM's CEO when GM was going down. So it's not a matter of, women like, it's not, it will be an echo chamber, like women talking to other women and other people not being part of the conversation won't help much. So I understand that we need to guide also men to understand what we actually need from them, because sometimes men, they think that it's a soft skill kind of, but it's not. It's the hard part. So if it's not only interpersonal like conversations or giving support to women, it's more like a systematic problem inside the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnella. And I'd like to mention a couple of points that came through from this conversation. First, education. Start from an early age in introducing STEM to both girls and boys. And location. From the discussion, we always talk about, let's say it comes out more that these changes are happening on a rural urban level, and Arjan rightly mentioned so that on focus should be also the underdeveloped area or rural area, so we can just bridge the disparities, social and economic ones, and issues of participation in the labor market. Enno mentioned very rightfully so that women are on a technician level while men are more on a management position, and we need to, let's say, through our work and through our advocacy, address that. And hierarchy, but now going back to academia, that is an important aspect to be considered as well. And last but not least is exactly supporting and sharing the best practices, the best examples. Are very illustrious and high achieving women in STEM that we luckily had 3 of them today in the partner, but also not focusing only in STEM, but as Odeta rightfully mentioned in the beginning, science in general. We need more visibility on what women in science are doing in the country, in the region, and larger than that. And if there are no more comments or I don't know last words, I would like to, so in the chat you already have our contacts. please get in touch if you want to give a contribution to
Can
the
I have
charter.
follow-up, maybe question from what I mentioned before? Can I have a follow-up question
Yes,
from
please.
the previous?
Just, we are very out of
1
time,
minute or
so
two?
please, yeah, exactly. But very
Okay,
shortly,
regarding
thank you.
the, so I'm calling from Germany, so I'm not in Albania right now, and I studied physics. But when I was in high school or in secondary school, I didn't have an idea how physicists look like. And I kind of hated my teacher of physics because it made our life really miserable. However, I was so encouraged and I wanted to study it, and I studied University of Tirana. I did my bachelor and master there. And I went for the PhD in Italy, and now I'm doing a postdoc in Germany. As Ornella said it really beautifully, that you, after finish your PhD, you do a postdoc and another postdoc, and then where do you go? Research doesn't mean only academia, but means also in industry. So it doesn't mean you finish the postdoc and then you apply to become a professor and then you are settled. And going again back to the discussion of having this let's say, these plans for career advice is true, and I really admire this initiative of TUMO. I would love when I come back to Albania to visit that center. However, for example, I come from Firi, so it's like I want to know what's going on around, because Albania is not only Tirana, but this is a first step, and I really appreciate. But if there are some more concrete steps, how to go and reach more than just Tirana in this regard, and to see the benefits of this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Albana. It's very nice to have you here. Yes, this is what I was actually going to say. First, I need to clear something. Is it okay for all of you so we can share the whole participants list? The idea is to exchange with each other and to be in touch, and that's the idea of what we want to do. The more people get introduced to each other, get in touch with each other, the better. And if I have an okay from all of you, I can see the whole screen, the whole participants, but I guess it would be fine. Exactly, we want to finalize the charter, and basically what we are doing is that SCiDEV will be hosting, let's say, the network of Albanian women in STEM, but we are a group of women working to establish these networks. For example, I want to thank Abi a lot that she gave a final push and a good push to the charter. So we had something, let's say, that we can share with partners who want to contribute. And I want to thank Sidorella. I don't know whether she's here or not, but she has supported us with Editathon, so training us and on how to work on Wikipedia pages, on how to contribute to them. So it's Bleriana also is the executive director of SCiDEV. She's the one that, let's say, is bringing everything together. So the network is, Anila has always been with us. Teuta, which was here in the beginning, was also with us. And Taylor, which was a student of Anila, she's been, so the network, we're trying to grow it little by little. So please get in touch and please comment and give some sort of contribution to the charter. So we're going to address all the discussion that we had today, but we want to do something sustainable and something that has an impact, because we're STEM, and if we're not from STEM fields, we love STEM. So basically this is why everything is happening. So yes, thank you, Ornella. The last comment is that besides schools, Ornella believes that parents should be involved and educate children, that there are no jobs for men and women, and that is very important, and that is a very cultural, let's say, relevant comment, that one of the issues that should be addressed. And by promoting role models of women in STEM, we don't reach only out to young girls and women, but we reach out to parents as well, so to a wider audience. And I'm not good at closing down meetings, so I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. If you have anything to add, please feel free to email me, to email Beriana, and to email each other, because we'll be sharing the contacts. If you don't agree with sharing the contact, please just send us an email. Both Beriana and I are CC'd in all emails, so feel free to do so. Thanks a lot, and have a great rest of the afternoon. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Have a nice day.
Good luck. All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Have a nice evening.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.